Hey, I'm Gina. This is my video for the second observation that I was supposed to do for my English 634 class. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the way that Professor Tom Fox introduced a really difficult assignment to his freshman composition English 130 class. In my experience with working with freshman composition, this assignment has been easily the most difficult part for the students, more difficult than the actual inquiry project itself. And I think that the reason why is because students have never encountered this genre of writing before. The assignment is basically a review of the literature, but the act of synthesizing is really, really difficult for students. I mean, it's difficult for anybody, but it's especially difficult the first time that you are trying to figure out what this synthesis thing is and then do it in just a few weeks. But I think that the way Tom Fox went about doing this was probably one of the best ways that I've seen it done. I've only seen it done or introduced probably 3 or 4 times. Each time was a little different, and I would say that each time that I've seen it introduced, the explanation of it gets just a little bit better each time. The way he went about it is, it's this class of 90 in this big room, and Tom. And he spent the first 30 minutes of the class walking them through exactly how this assignment should work and what he expects from them in this assignment. And then he gave the last 20 minutes to the students to work more one-on-one with their mentors, to work things out, ask questions to their mentors that they may have been too shy or too intimidated to ask in the large lecture, or didn't occur to them until then, or whatever. So the way he started out the assignment is he put the assignment on the overhead for all of the class to see. And then he broke it down. He read the assignment out loud, and then he said what the assignment, what that one paragraph meant in more simpler terms or more everyday language, to make the assignment sheet seem less daunting. He then explains the point of the assignment and why the students are doing it, which I think is a really smart move, because when students find a point for doing work or the relevancy of it, they're more likely to be interested in it. They're less likely to resist it. When students think that they're doing busy work, or they're just doing an assignment because the professor wants you to do an assignment rather than what am I going to get out of this? Why do I want to do this? They're more likely to do it, which is just kind of human nature. Next, he tells the students very specifically how they should organize the assignment. He tells them the best order to do this assignment, the best way to introduce it, the best way to organize it, and he also emphasizes in this assignment that the conclusion is not just a throwaway, a lot like other essays that students do. They seem to just kind of write the same thing in the first paragraph as they do for their conclusion. But when it comes to a review of the literature, that is not what should happen, especially if it's a review of the literature that's fueling an inquiry process. The conclusion should really be you saying, all right, based on all of this stuff that I just wrote about, and, you know, Professor Smith-Jones saying X and Professor Tom Jones saying why, this is what I think, and these are the questions that I still have, and these are the questions that I have had answered, and they field these new questions, and here's what I still haven't found out, and here's what I need to do next, which is a really unique ending to an essay, because normal essays that I think within the genres that the students have previously encountered, especially in secondary school, they're more literature essays rather than research essays, where the conclusion has to be a definitive conclusion rather than with more questions. And so a lot of students are just used to throwing away the conclusion where they just repeat the introduction rather than using the conclusion to say what they want their next steps to be. After he does all this, he gives the students time to ask questions. The questions that he asks the students to get them to ask him questions are, he starts, who is confused? And in a class of 90, nobody raises their hand. And then he said, who's nervous? And a bunch of students raised their hands. And then he said, who doesn't know what they want to write about? And a few students raised their hands. Then he asked a few students to share, who raised their hands, about being nervous, what they were nervous about. One student said that he was nervous about making sure that he had a scholarly source. One student said that they're not sure about how they continue with this and how to make their review of the literature long enough. Tom said basically that a key to writing this thing is to make sure that you have really good sources, and that the more time you spend on finding good sources and reading them and getting to be really familiar with them, the easier the actual writing process of the review of the literature is going to be, which is really true. I think a lot of students just kind of grab whatever are the first 3 hits on Google for their sources and think that that's going to be okay. And then when they go to write their review of the literature, it's really hard because they're trying to force sources to fit when these sources don't necessarily fit because they weren't picky in finding their sources. One student asked, what if it's a book that I'm using? Do I have to read the whole book, or, And Tom said, maybe skim through the book, find the chapters that seem most relevant, and then read those chapters to start with. Another student said, what if I'm finding limited information on my topic? And Tom said that that's a pretty common problem for students at first, especially when they're new to researching and using the school library research station, and using Google Scholar and other academic sources like JSTOR. Researching is just like any other skill. It requires practice, and you get better at it the more you do it. But when you're new and the most research you've ever really done is in high school clicking around on Google and not really having to read these 30-page academic scholarly sources, it gets daunting. It's a whole new level of research. And it's, yeah. The last question that I have, the student asked, is, can I use an interview? And of course, the question was, yeah, use whatever primary resources that you want. I think that a lot of the students' concern for this comes from this assignment being so open-ended and yet so structured at the same time. There's definitely a structure to a review of the literature. And while students are able to play with the structure of their writing as much as they want to, being given a more rigid structure for how to write this thing at first, I think is more helpful. And then students can go back once they have a draft of this thing and rearrange it and play with their writing and play with the structure and how they want to present this thing. But I think at first, telling students that they should, play the game this way helps them organize their thoughts for this new genre. And then after they have a draft of this new genre of writing, let them play with the ways they want to organize it. Next, Tom pulled up a sample of a lit review from a previous student. And the lit review was a really good one. And he not only had this lit review that was a good one for students to look at as an example, he also had it highlighted, and he had in-text, or not in-text, but like side comments for why that part was highlighted. And what Tom did is he went through this essay and he highlighted and made these comments throughout it for the places that were really good, for places that the students who are looking at this essay as an example to see, oh, this is good because she uses a really good signal phrase here, or this is good because she really puts these two authors in conversation and I can see that. And I think that not just giving students an example paper for this genre to read and figure out, but also giving students an example paper pointing to specific aspects of this paper that made it good really helped the students to feel comfortable in beginning this paper and writing it.